Jim, go ahead and give us the countdown when you're ready so that we can do that again.
We're live right now. Go ahead.
Hello, sports fans, and welcome to SportsBeat Weekly, a production of Oregon SportsBeat. SportsBeat Weekly is a sports magazine show format focusing on local sports covered by Oregon SportsBeat, primarily high school sports. I'm your co-host, Dave Hall, joined by Ryan Johnson. Our show today focuses on local teams as they prepare for state playoff action. Our guests today include, at 1:15, we'll be joined by Sharlene Alagar. She is the boys volleyball coach at Central Catholic High School. They start boys volleyball playoff action Wednesday night with a championship matchups set for Saturday afternoon. At 1:30, we're going to be joined by Britt Hartmann. He is the play-by-play broadcaster for the Oregon Girls Lacrosse Association. The Oregon Girls Lacrosse Championships are going on tonight, tomorrow night, and Thursday night, and Oregon SportsBeat will bring you those live. Britt will talk about the playoff format and give us a preview of the teams that are in action. Tonight's two semifinals are in the Gold Division. Then the Silver Division Championship is tomorrow night, and the Gold Division Championship is Thursday night. At 1:45, we're going to be joined by the softball coach at Central Catholic, TJ Pruneda. And TJ has his Rams. They have a game tomorrow night against winless David Douglas. And with a win tomorrow night for the Rams, they would clinch at least a share of the Mount Hood Conference Championship as they move on to the volleyball playoffs. The boys and girls baseball and softball playoffs start next week, and Oregon SportsBeat will be bringing you those. We'll also talk a little bit today about baseball and boys lacrosse as we get set for those playoff actions also coming up. So, Ryan, it's a busy week for Oregon SportsBeat, and we're covering it all.
Yeah, it sure is, Dave. We had a busy week last week with girls lacrosse and baseball and softball wrapping up. And this next week looks to be even busier. Like you said, we're going to be out at Liberty High School tonight for the semifinal girls lacrosse matches of the gold bracket. So these are the top 4 teams in the state. 6 o'clock, we've got Grant and Lake Oswego going head-to-head. And at 8 o'clock, we've got Jesuit and OES. So we're looking forward to a big week of girls lacrosse. We may do some boys volleyball this week on Wednesday as those teams gear up for their state championship. And then boys lacrosse playoffs starts on Friday. So, yeah, big week.
You know, we had a big week over the last 10 days. I did a baseball game, a softball game, 2 volleyball games, and a lacrosse game. So Oregon SportsBeat, we cover it all.
Yeah, this time of year focuses mostly on boys and girls lacrosse and baseball and softball. But now we've got this boys volleyball in the mix. And I know you're interested in it. I'm real interested to hear what Sharlene has to say about the sport, about the development of the sport, and then about her program at Central Catholic.
You know, this is their first year as an OSA sanctioned sport. We started the show last week, and we were talking a little bit about baseball, and we're going to talk a little bit about baseball now. When we started last week, I gave a special shout out to one of the local kids who made it good and got called up to the Major League Baseball franchise, the Arizona Diamondbacks. That was Tim Trauble, and we had his dad on as a guest last week. And so as we start out this week talking about baseball, I've got another shout out to a local kid, and that kid is Mick Abel, pitched for Jesuit. He was the 2020 Gatorade Player of the Year. He's been in the minor leagues for the Philadelphia Phillies. He was drafted in their first round. Friday, he got called up to the Phillies, and yesterday he made his major league debut. The Phillies were playing the Pittsburgh Pirates, their young pitcher, who was one of the biggest stars in baseball last year, Paul Skeens. So Abel was pitching against Skeens, and Mick Abel came up with a 1-0 win for the Phillies. So congratulations to him, as another local baseball player makes good.
That's excellent, seeing our local talent get up to the top level in their sport. I remember that kid from a few years back. He was he took him to the state championship. Is that what you said?
Yep, state champion, Gatorade Player of the Year, called up to the minors. He was kind of up and down, had an injury, but he's been pitching really well as late, and Phillies called him up, and he got him a big win.
Well, that's excellent. Our interview with Justin Barkas from Central Catholic last week, he was talking a lot about his pitching staff and how deep it was and how valuable that was going to be for them going into playoffs, which start, I believe, next Monday, Memorial Day, baseball playoffs.
Let me give you the current status in the Mount Hood Conference in baseball. And Central Catholic is on top. They're ranked number 3 in the state, 14-2 in conference. Sandy is second, ranked number 11. They're 12-4. Clackamas is third. They're ranked number 7. They're 11-5 in conference. Barlow is number 4. They are 10-5 in conference, ranked 17th overall. Nelson is ranked 23rd. They're 7-8 in conference. It pretty much looks like all 5 of those teams may make the state playoffs. The top 3 teams will get the automatic qualifier. Those are likely to be Central Catholic, Sandy, and either Clackamas or Barlow. The other 2 teams are likely to get in. As you know, 21 teams get in from the leagues. Mount Hood Conference gets 3, and then the next highest 11 teams. So generally, the 32 teams that get in will go down to 30 in the rankings. So those 5 teams for the Mount Hood Conference look like sure teams to get a playoff, and it's a big season for them. As I said, Central Catholic now ranked 3 in the state, only behind undefeated South Salem, who's 23-0, and West Williams 20-5.
Yeah, that Central Valley Conference will have the South Salem team that you talked about going into the playoffs. Looks like they'll get the number 1 seed. 3 Rivers League is going to send 5 teams to playoffs. Southwest Conference, we've talked about them throughout the season. They're going to send, looks like 6 teams to the state playoffs for 6A baseball. So Mount Hood Conference representing with 5. The Pacific Conference is going to send 5 teams, it looks like. Metro League will send 4 teams. And PIL is going to get 2 programs in for sure. Grant and Wells will go to playoffs. And then it looks like Lincoln's going to be able to squeeze in too.
Let me kind of recap how this all gets determined. 32 teams are going to make the playoffs. 21 of those are guaranteed spots by league. I mentioned the Hood Conference gets 3. The state rankings are frozen at midnight this Thursday on the 22nd. Those 21 teams get in. That'll leave 11 additional spots. The next 11 highest RPI teams that are not already in get in. So we won't do the playoff pairings or anything until Friday. But it certainly looks like Central Catholic is going to be in the top 3 for the pairings.
Hey, so when we talked to Coach Barkas last week, he explained a unique playoff qualification structure for the Mount Hood Conference. Mm-hmm. Can you recap that process and tell me if you've heard about any other conferences doing anything like that?
I'm not aware of any other conference, but here's how it worked out. The Mount Hood Conference didn't want to come down to the end of the season with really good teams playing teams that were not ranked very high. The Mount Hood Conference has 2 teams that are in the bottom 2 of the state rankings. Sometimes when a really good team plays a bad team and beats them, it even makes their RPI go down, the good team. And so they wanted to have a little round robin tournament at the end where all the really good teams play each other to boost their RPI. And they've been doing that. That's how we've gotten to teams that have more than 12 games. As for example, Central Catholic has 16. They would have normally had only 14 regular season games. So they went through that. I don't know of any other league that's doing it. The Mountain Hood Conference's goal in doing that was to make sure RPIs didn't go down for the top teams at the bottom. And I think it's been very successful because they're going to get 5 teams in.
Yeah, so they're in their last. Yeah, so they have games tonight and tomorrow night, and then that'll wrap up the regular season, at least for the Mount Hood Conference. You said rankings are frozen on Thursday. Does that mean there's games on Wednesday and Thursday then too?
Not in the Mount Hood Conference. I'm not sure if any other league has a game during that time, but they'll be frozen Thursday night. Mount Hood Conference's last games, I believe, are tomorrow night. Gotcha.
Okay, well, thanks for the update on the baseball scene. If you don't have anything else, let's talk about boys lacrosse before we get into our guest segments.
All right.
So when we talked earlier today, I hadn't found the bracket, but I did find the bracket since I talked to you last, Dave.
I couldn't find it either, so you've got the info.
I'm going to talk to the OHSLA guys about getting the bracket more front and center on the website, but it's there after a couple links, a couple clicks. And so the boys lacrosse kind of follows the same format that girls lacrosse does in football, I guess, at this point. They have a championship bracket. So for the boys, the top 24 teams in the rankings go into the championship bracket. And then they have a second bracket, and they call it a cascade bracket for boys lacrosse. And so we're looking at the championship bracket. If you're one of the top 8 seeds, you get a bye in the first round, which is this Friday. And then the next 16 teams will play this Friday and then advance to play one of those top 8 seeds. So
I haven't seen the bracketing, but it would not be a wild guess for me to say that the number 1 seed would most likely be Jesuit.
Jesuit's still a number 1 seed, yeah. Now, I talked to you earlier today about this. It's interesting when you look at the rankings. Jesuit's got the number 1. That's not a surprise. Lake Ridge sits at a number 2 seed. Also not terribly too much of a surprise. But when you look at, they're both 17-1. When you look at Jesuit's 1 loss, it's to Lake Ridge back on April 22nd, I believe. So not too long ago, actually. When you look at Lake Ridge's 1 loss, it's to an out-of-state team, Mercer Island. And so Lake Ridge is undefeated in the state this year. And what that tells me is that we could have a little bit more competitive of a boys tournament in this year's playoffs.
Yeah, that sounds exciting. It's, when you figure that out and say those things, it almost seems like Lake Ridge should be like number 1.
Lake Ridge could be considered the favorite, yeah. So we are going to come back in a couple of weeks and do another show, and at that point, boys playoffs are going to be going on. So we're going to bring on a guest representing the boys lacrosse scene, and we'll get the inside scoop, and the playoff picture will be a bit more clear at that point also.
All right, we're going to be joined by Sharlene Alagar, and she is the boys volleyball coach at Central Catholic High School. I might say an OSAA sanctioned event. State championships will be going on very shortly. And Sharlene, thanks for joining us.
Hi, Dave. Thank you. Happy to be here.
And we're glad to have you. I think there's a lot of people out there that didn't realize that boys volleyball was a OSAA sanctioned sport, and that's because you're in your first year. And you pretty much made the jump from club sport last year to an OSAA event. How did that happen so quickly?
Yeah, I think, when we introed this opportunity in 2023, and you're right, it was very much positioned as a club sport. So we really were just about the movement and creating awareness and visibility to the sport by creating this opportunity. We started this journey in 2023 with about 30-ish teams across the state. We doubled that in 2024, and this year became emerging with about 70 teams all in. So I think the tremendous momentum around the growth with how many teams have come forward to display the interest and the level of excitement and energy around the sport for boys volleyball it's a really hard stat to ignore, right, when you see how fast we've grown in the past few years.
I think when the OSA probably saw that and saw that you doubled in size in 1 year, and now you're up to 70 boys teams, that certainly had to impress them.
Yes, exactly. And that was always the goal. We knew that the opportunity existed, and it was really about the overall volleyball community across the state. When you think about the coaches and ADs and supporters, just really being and amplifying the voice of our male athletes to just say, hey, this is an opportunity that we'd like to serve to them, and they are interested. And if we get it into the schools, they will come. And sure enough, they're here, and we're here.
You 2 years ago in 2023, when you came on board at Central Catholic as the coach, I think you finished 5th in the state. Last year you were 2nd. How's this year gone?
Well, of course, Dave, we want number one. I think
You are number one.
Of course we do. Our goal has just been to bring our best game to every match that we play, right? And we just finished the season on Saturday. Rankings were frozen Saturday night. We finished 14-0. I think it's a great place to be. It's a great place to start, but the work starts now, right? We are getting ready for our playoff game on Wednesday, the 21st. We'll host it at home versus Sherwood. And then if we win that game, we go to state on Saturday and Sunday. So the journey for us is just starting. It's been an exciting season thus far, but we're not going to rest on our laurels. We're not going to get comfortable. We're going to keep fighting for our goals and how we want to finish the season.
Now, since you're an OSA sport, are you set up the same way as other sports? In other words, is it a Mount Hood conference with the same teams in it?
Yes, correct.
And you went undefeated in conference action.
We did in the Mount Hood Conference, correct.
Now, you were telling me earlier that you played in a tournament over the weekend. What tournament was that?
It was the Estacada tournament.
And how did you do?
We swept the tournament. We went undefeated and won the gold championship.
So you all together, let's see, what does that make you, 19-0?
Technically, they only counted 2 games out of the 5 that we played on Saturday, but yeah, it would be about 17, 17-0 if you count all of the games that we played for the end season. So again, it was really exciting because in order to win the gold championship on Saturday, we fought against Park Rose, who's ranked number 2 right now in the state.
Okay. Tell us a little bit about your background in volleyball and how you came to the position at Central Catholic.
Yeah, I think, I started my journey in 5th grade many years ago. And that's when I fell in love with the sport. I went to play club ball for Rose City volleyball. It's when I met Rick Lorenz and the team from Central Catholic. I was always in private school, so it was just a natural transition for me to go from All Saints to Central playing in high school. And then after high school, I just couldn't let it go. I love the sport. I'm so passionate about the sport that I started coaching from 18 and on. So I've been coaching for well over 25 plus years now. When you think about—
And where have you coached?
it was primarily CYO. And then I started coaching club in 2020 for the Portland Chaos Volleyball Club, and then started coaching boys volleyball in 2023 when I was offered the role at Central.
Well, you can't learn from anybody better than Rick Lorenz, all the attributes he's achieved over his career.
He's a true legend.
All right, let me ask you this: you said the playoffs start Wednesday, and you have the game against Sherwood.
Yes.
We're trying to figure out whether we're going to be able to cover that or not. Hopefully, we can.
Okay.
And then your finals are on Saturday. Is that right?
Yep, they kick off Saturday and Sunday. So that'll be the quarterfinals and semifinals on Saturday, with finals culminating on Sunday, the 25th. And then they've added in a Super State Championship. So that's new. That will happen on Monday, the 26th, for all divisions across 3A through 6A to now compete against each other for everybody who won the championship within their division. That's just for extra.
So a 3A team could beat a 6A team and be the super champion.
Possibly.
Oh, I really like that. I remember years ago, Indiana basketball had that, where they opened up the state tournament to all the different divisions, and hopefully to see if a small team could win the championship. That movie Hoosiers is about a team doing that.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
gotta get
Who
into
should we
this
look for?
conversation, you guys.
Uh-huh.
Sorry,
Go
Dave.
ahead,
I need to interrupt for a second. Hi, Charlene.
Hi, Ryan.
Hi. Hey, this super championship idea that you just threw out, or reality that you just threw out, is it optional or is it mandatory for the teams?
I mean, that's a good question. I think it's there for people who want to participate, and I think most should do it because I know that the word on the street was that the players have been asking for this. So Oregon High School Boys Association was just like, okay, well, let's give them a super state and let them play each other. So just like the way that we were able to play Park Rose yesterday, they're technically 5A. They are ranked number 1 for 5A. And then number 2 in state overall, right? And so I think, and it was a great competitive battle against them on Saturday. So, I mean, I think it would definitely be a lot of fun. I don't know that it's mandatory, but I would think that all of the champions from each of their divisions would be in for that.
Yeah, I think it's a fantastic idea. I guess what I'm getting at is, since you guys you're still in the process of sanctioning your sport with
Correct.
OSEA, once that becomes approved, assuming it does your sport then lose the ability to do things like that?
It's a good question. I think we're going to be learning a lot in this next year and 2 years of once we can officially get sanctioned.
Who's in charge of the
Charlene,
boys
you
association?
mentioned Park Rose is the number 2 team. Who should we watch for in the 6A tournament besides you guys?
In the 6A, I think I've got my eye on, Franklin and Clackamas. Um, there's a lot of good teams within the top, 5 of 6A. And so I think it'll just be interesting to see who decides to show up as we get through the playoffs and into the tournament itself. But yeah, there's some strong contenders in there. We're just gonna have to be ready for anything at this point. And then
Who
Ryan,
are some of your? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I think Ryan had asked who was managing the Oregon High School Boys.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Patrick Gibson has been our point person who's been helping us to lead these efforts for that.
Great. I'm curious, and I think it's a fantastic idea. And then I guess I'm kind of looking ahead. It would be possibly feasible that you could do this with other sports too.
Yeah.
5A versus 6A oftentimes is a very interesting matchup. Hey, I had another question about the boys volleyball athlete. That's this kind of new species that we aren't used to seeing around here. What does he look like? Does he play other sports? Is this somebody that primarily plays volleyball only, or what's it look like, at least at Central Catholic?
Well, I think as we're still developing the rigor behind it, right now, we're a mixed bag, right? We have boys who have played club for, a few years now. And so, like, that is their priority sport. And then I've got multi-sport athletes. I kind of mentioned before, we have football, basketball, soccer players on the team, I think, and track athletes, etc. So I think as we get sanctioned, it's going to make it, a little bit harder perhaps for our student athletes to have to now pick a lane, because right now they're kind of straddling the line and doing both simultaneously. If they're playing soccer right now, they've also got boys volleyball. They're kind of going to do both things, and track, right? And so I think they've got a lot of competing priorities that they're just going to have to start to pick a lane once we are sanctioned, so that we can have the commitment that we need to drive the program that we're trying to drive.
Sharlene, who are some of the players we should watch as you enter the state tournament?
From other teams or from my team?
No, from your team, I'm sorry.
Oh, I mean, we've got Dwight Wynn, who's one of our primary opposite hitters. He's just got a really great bounce on his swing. So he's really electrifying to watch. Our middles are really strong. Um, our libero is just a ninja who just manages to run the court and gets everything. Our outside hitter, Tosh, like I can't, like they're all equally amazing. You're asking me to choose between my children and who I favor, right? I think everybody on the court, they all play a critical role in our success, and I tell them that every day. We don't ever just rely on one primary player. It's all of them coming together to lead us to victory. And if they're not playing together, we don't win, right? And so that's really our mindset, is that we have to rely on everybody. No matter what position and role you're in, everybody has to do their jobs equally.
Well, thanks for joining us, Sharlene. We're going to let you go. Good luck to Wednesday night with your first round matchup with Sherwood. Good luck in the tournament. We hope to see you in the super tournament.
Thank you. We hope to see you soon. Appreciate the support.
Thanks,
Okay.
Sharlene.
Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Well, Ryan, that was really interesting. You and I are both interested in the boys volleyball program.
Yeah, I have a load of questions. I didn't even have questions that I didn't get to there, but the Super Cup or the Super Tournament that takes place after the classification tournaments, I think is a fantastic idea.
Like I said, they did that in Indiana in basketball until their state association put an end to it. All the teams that were lower classifications wanted to play the bigger schools. The bigger schools thought that they had a lot to lose by playing. What if they lost one of those games?
And that was exactly the point of my question too, or that's the problem with these super championships, is that there's only something to lose for the highest seed. So unless it's mandated by the organization that oversees the sport, it usually ends up dying out.
Mm-hmm. And that's exactly what happened.
Yeah. So that's why I was asking her about the association and how the rules change if they do get certified under OSBA, how things change. And I think it's a good conversation for their organization to be talking about right now.
It'll be a great sport to watch, that's for sure.
I'm looking. Yeah, I can't remember the last time I saw a boys volleyball match, to be honest with you. Maybe on TV, some Olympic volleyball, where you talk about super athletes. My goodness.
I can't think of the last time I saw a high school boys volleyball game on TV, if I ever did.
Never. No. So Wednesday will be interesting. I'm planning on getting over there to Central and checking that out. Regardless of if Ram TV is going to cover it or not. Good stuff.
Do you want to talk about boys lacrosse before we bring Britt in, or do you want to bring her in?
Well, let's see. Boys lacrosse or girls lacrosse?
We were talking earlier about boys lacrosse. We're going to cover girls lacrosse with Britt.
Yeah, I guess final thoughts on the boys lacrosse scene is the rankings are out. Looks like we follow Central Catholic. I don't know if we'll follow some other teams, but they're going to host. They've got a 13 seed, and they're going to host Oregon City, who's a 20 seed. So these early round matchups in boys lacrosse are sometimes the best matches. From what I've seen in my experience, some of the top teams are so good that it often gets not very competitive once you get into the further rounds. But these early rounds are often very competitive. So expect to see us over there on Friday night to cover that match.
Okay.
So yeah, that's all I've got for boys lacrosse. Why don't we transition to girls lacrosse?
All right, we're ready to bring in our guest, Britt Hartmann.
Yeah, Britt's with us right now.
Oh, hey, how's it going?
Britt, welcome to. Good. You are going to be doing the play-by-play for the two gold semifinal games tonight, the silver final tomorrow night, and the gold final on Thursday night. I believe you've done the finals before, have you not?
Indeed, yeah. We did the live stream play-by-play last year for the same lineup. So semis, and then final for Silver Cup and final for state championship.
Why don't you explain how the playoff format is set up with the two divisions, the gold and silver division, and then we'll talk about the individual matchups and the individual teams. So how does this get set up into two divisions, the gold and the silver?
Yeah, absolutely. I heard you kind of discussing boys lacrosse earlier. We run a really similar format where we have a state championship and then also a Silver Cup. That kind of divides the state a little bit to make it a little bit more equitable and give opportunities. So I know at OSAA they have 6A, 5A, 4A, et cetera. And that kind of helps get more teams opportunities for postseason play. So we devised model after the boys with a state championship where the top 12 teams go. And then for the Silver Cup playoffs, the top 8 teams go. So it gives a little bit more opportunity for those, or the next 8 teams
now,
go.
Do the silver teams get hardware at the end when they win?
Yeah, so this is actually the first year that we're opting into giving actual medals at the end. We haven't done that in the past. I don't know why, but it was something that was brought to our attention that the boys do, and we wanted to make sure that everybody has access to that. So yeah, Silver Cup gets a trophy that gets passed around, and then we're also going to have medals for them as well.
Okay. You're going to be doing 2 semifinal games in the elite, in the gold division tonight. Can you tell us a little bit about those matchups and maybe a little bit about each one of those teams?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first game, game 1, will be at 6 p.m. Both games tonight are going to be at Liberty High School. First one is at 6 p.m. Second one is at 8 p.m. We have Grant, which was the number 2 seed versus the number 3 seed, Lake Oswego. That game's going to be fascinating. In regular season play, Lake Oswego ended up beating Grant when they opted into playing each other. They're not in the same division, but a lot of the higher seed teams, line up non-conference play, non-league play, early on in the season to try to see where they match up. And Lake Oswego ended up coming out ahead in Grant, across Grant on that back in, I think it was in March when they played that game. It was a 1-goal game difference. So tonight that game's going to be pretty wild. It'll be interesting to see who comes out on top. It's really difficult to beat a team twice, let alone in postseason play. So I'm curious to see what kind of tricks Grant has to pull out to see if they can, take down Lake Oswego or not. Lake Oswego has not lost a game in state. They went to Colorado and played 3 games out of state and ended up losing those against some pretty tough competition. So we'll see, how they match up for the rest of in-state games. But so far they have not lost in-state. And then Grant's only loss this season was to Lake Oswego. So we'll see how that game kind of shapes up. Both coaches, Paige Timberg for Lake Oswego and then Helen McDevitt for Grant, have a long history in Oregon. And I'm very curious to kind of see, what tricks they pull out in order to compete. Second game that we have is at 8 p.m. Jesuit versus who's the number 1 seed versus number 5 seed OES. It's pretty exciting for OES to be in here because they were able to take down the number 4 seed West Lynn in quarterfinals. So already have an upset under their belt. So I'm curious to kind of see what ends up happening with the number 5 versus the number 1. In theory, Jesuit should come out on top, but crazier things have happened in Oregon lacrosse world. So curious to see how that goes.
Grant gets to the semifinals. They've had wins over Lincoln. They were a seeded team, so they got a first-round bye. Lake Oswego got a first-round bye and then beat Lake Ridge. Jesuit had a first-round bye, then beat McMinnville. And OES had a first-round bye. They beat West Lynn. I'm sorry, they did play in the first round and beat St. Mary's. West Lynn had the bye. They were the highest seeded team. So the only team that really advanced their position was OES by knocking off West Lynn.
Yeah. And what's really interesting is in regular season play, this might come into this depends on if Grant is able to come out on top tonight or not. But in regular season play, Grant actually beat Jesuit by 1 goal in regular season. So there's kind of the top 3 have kind of cycled, this team lost to this team and vice versa. So I'm very curious to see how the playoffs go. It's going to be some really exciting games.
Who are some outstanding players we should watch for the teams tonight?
Yeah, for Grant, I would say, there are phenomenal players on all of these teams, but one standout player is Kate Ratner-Praska, number 5 for Grant. She is committed to Northwestern, which it's pretty rare that you get an Oregon human committed to such a high caliber team on the East Coast. So curious to see how she does. Phenomenal athlete and plays center for them, but is kind of a smaller player. So a successful center being a little bit shorter is kind of a crazy thing to be in lacrosse. I don't know how much you know about lacrosse, or for those of you listening, after every goal it starts with a draw, and that's like a tip off in basketball. And so it pays to be tall in that type of situation. And Kate's kind of a smaller player, and she's still able to get those draw controls because she's so fast and quick on the reaction time that she's able to get it to the ground and kind of fight for a ground ball despite her kind of shorter stature. So kind of excited to see how she does tonight for Grant. And then for Lake Oswego, go ahead.
No,
go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say, every time you win a draw, that's an extra possession.
Yeah, we kind of say the draw is the game within the game, and so if you're able to get the draw, I have an age-old saying, "Win the draw, rule the world." And so if you're able to get that draw, it's hard to lose possession with these high-caliber teams. So you have to work a lot harder to cause turnovers if you're not winning the draw at the middle. So having good draw takers is really important. Lake Oswego has a phenomenal draw taker, senior Millie Prager. I don't know the stats off the top of my head, but I would argue that she has the most draw controls in the state. So very curious to see how she does tonight against a pretty good draw taker versus number 5, Kate Ratner-Praska. So yeah, it's going to be interesting. As for Jesuit,
goalies, do we have?
Oh, goalies. Yeah. Go ahead.
I was just to say, how about goalies? Got anybody that's really outstanding?
All of these teams have pretty phenomenal goalies, I would say. I think one of the top goalies in the state plays for Jesuit. In my opinion, I'm a little bit biased because I am a goalie. But there's quite a few that I think could be contenders for state, but I think the Jesuit goalie is pretty phenomenal in terms of being able to make those stops. I believe, oh gosh, where is she on that roster? The name's escaping me currently right now, but I would say that Jesuit goalie is pretty phenomenal. They're doing a really good job of being able to stop those fast break goes. I'll come up with that name shortly though. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, I wanted to go over. You're the president-elect of the OGLA, is that correct?
Yeah, Oregon Girls Lacrosse Association.
Yeah, and so what does that mean to be the president? What are your duties?
Yeah, so currently right now, I heard you guys talking about getting boys volleyball sanctioned. So they're what you call an emerging sport. We just presented in October of this past year, and then again in April to OSAA to also kind of follow those routes to become an OSAA emerging activity. Oregon lacrosse has been around since OGLA has been around since 1995, and then the boys side OHSLA has been around since around that time. 96, I think, is when they got their time finalized. So we've been around since the 90s, kind of growing, existing, and having these state championships. And I don't think OSAA has added a full sport since they added softball. I believe in 74 was the year that it added. So it's really difficult to kind of break into that. Originally, they had a minimum requirement of 50 teams in order to 50 schools had to have teams in order to count it as an OSAA sanctioned sport before they'd be considering. And so the last couple of years, they added this emerging activity capability in order to potentially propel other sports that are kind of struggling to break into that. So that's where boys volleyball and then also girls flag football have kind of stepped into that role. And then lacrosse is starting to follow. They'll be voting on it in October. So right now, as president-elect, we're working towards growing specifically at the youth level. You can't build a high school program without having youth to kind of support it and have that feeder in order to grow it. So right now, we're working alongside with the boys programs to try to get emerging sports status as well, to see where that kind of leads us. So biggest
Well, you're
step right
pretty
now is
busy.
growth. Yes,
You're
indeed.
you're busy because not only that, you're the girls lacrosse coach at Pacific University, and you also are an official.
Yeah, not everyone gets to make their hobby their career, so I'm fortunate enough to be in that in that situation. But yeah, I coach the women's lacrosse program at Pacific University. Yep, and then I also officiate. I started officiating because we were low on officials a couple years back, and then I found out that I enjoyed it. So I get to see a lot of lacrosse in my random careers, which is pretty fun.
We won't know who those teams are in the gold final until after tonight, but we do know the silver final. Excuse me. That's Beaverton and Central Catholic. What can you tell us about those two teams in the silver final tomorrow night?
Absolutely. So Beaverton is not new to the finals. They have kind of been in and out of the Silver Cup championship for the past couple of years. They the last couple of years they haven't been in it, but previous to that, under a different coach, they were kind of in and out of the Silver Cup championship here and there. So this is the first year they've been back, I believe, since 2019, maybe 2021. There was obviously a gap for COVID there, so it's a little fuzzy. But their head coach, Riley Drillinger, is a longtime Oregon lacrosse human. She was at Clackamas and then transferred to West Linn as a high schooler and then played at Cal. So in Cal Berkeley down in California, phenomenal athlete, very good lacrosse mind. So curious to see how that kind of comes out. Central Catholic, their head coach actually won Oregon Girls Lacrosse Association's head coach of the year last year. So two phenomenal coaches that are kind of growing these programs. They play very different style. I would say Central Catholic is a lot more methodical in terms of how they move the ball around the 8 meter and slowing it down, trying to use their time on attack. Beaverton has a couple athletes that it's a lot more fast paced, high caliber speed through the midfield. They have a pretty phenomenal midfielder, Ashley Hendrickson, who is very tall. Like I mentioned on that draw, makes it really effective and is very, very athletic, can drive really, really quickly to the cage. So definitely going to be curious to see how that goes for them. It's going to be a fun one tomorrow.
Brian, I know you have some questions for Britt.
I do. Hi, Britt. How's it going?
Hey, going well.
Good. Hey, I have a question about the grant program. So Oregon SportsBeat's covered the finals for a number of years now. I don't remember seeing Grant in the Final Four in either bracket. What's going on at Grant that now they're one of the top 4 teams?
Yeah. I believe Grant was in the finals last year, but that was the first time, or the Final Four, the quarterfinals last year. That was the first time they'd been in the Final Four since I knew. Obviously, the Jesuit and Lake Oswego has been in the state championship for the umpteenth year in a row. So it was kind of cool to see a Portland Public School step into that mix last year, and then they kind of have been growing. I don't know how much you all follow, but the lacrosse counterpart for a lot of athletes is soccer, and Grant soccer program has been in the state championship for soccer for a lot of years running. So a lot of athletes do both soccer and lacrosse. And so they've kind of helped kind of propel that state championship run, I would say, for a lot of their dual sport athletes, which has been pretty cool. I will say that their head coach, Helen McDevitt, so I forget where she played, but somewhere in the Ivies, she was a D1 lacrosse player, and her 2 daughters kind of helped push the athleticism of Grant. One of them graduated last year, Erin McDevitt, and is playing right now for UMass Lowell. And then a year before that, Megan McDevitt is playing for San Diego State University. So 2 phenomenal D1 lacrosse players that were her daughters, which helps kind of, build that structure, and then also, have that athleticism to kind of push and propel them into where they're at right now. So I would say that it's a combo of high caliber athletes for, the dual sport, and then also having someone who's done it before with a couple, a little bit of genetics helping their side, so to speak.
Yeah, a lot of athletes coming through Grant in all types of
Hmm.
sports, like you mentioned. And then Lincoln has had a strong girls program for a while too. Are those the two main Portland public schools that are producing decent girls lacrosse teams, or are there others that we just don't know about?
Yeah, I would say those out of Portland are the two big ones. Last year, and I don't this year they kind of are in a building year, but Ida B. Wells also had a couple really phenomenal athletes step out of the woodwork. We had Olivia Kozitsa, who's now a freshman at Oregon, who is playing nearly every game for even Big Ten games. So, if not starting for those games, so phenomenal athletes coming out of Portland in general in the lacrosse world, which is pretty cool to see.
Well, fantastic. Thanks for your time, Britt. Uh,
Absolutely.
I'll see you tonight out at Liberty High School for the games.
Awesome. Looking
Yeah,
forward to it.
thanks
It's going to be a fun one for those listening.
Mhm. All right. Thanks for joining us, Britt. We're going to end this segment and move on to our final segment. Dave, do you want to go ahead and introduce our next guest?
All right. Next up with us, last week we had the boys baseball coach at Central Catholic High School, and softball coach TJ Pruneda, and thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
And I know you're excited about things coming up. Tell us a little bit. I know you have a game tomorrow night against David Douglas, and I know there's a three-way tie at the top of the Mount Hood Conference right now. David Douglas hasn't won a game. With a win tonight, will you tomorrow night clinch at least a share of the Mount Hood Conference title?
Yeah, so looking, it's one of those weird things where you're trying to figure out every tiebreaker scenario. And with a win tomorrow, we should have at least a share of the Mount Hood Conference title, and it'll come down to a tiebreaker on who will get the home field playoff game for the Mount Hood Conference.
Now, I know you are 8-2. Nelson is 8-2. Gresham is 8-2. So you're all even. Let's assume you get a win tomorrow night against David Douglas. Nelson and Gresham are playing each other. So one of those teams will be out. It'll be down just to you and that other team. How do you stand as far as, do you have some sort of playoff ranking qualifiers if you wind up in a tie?
Yeah, so the way our standard operating procedures work for the Mount Hood Conference is if there is a tie, we'll go to head-to-head, which us, Gresham, and Barlow are all 1-1 against each other. So Barlow and Gresham play tomorrow night. We play David Douglas. Assuming we win and Barlow wins, it'll be a head-to-head split. And then I am pretty sure this is where it gets a little tricky. Nelson would be the third-place team, and we're 2-0 against Nelson, or they're fourth place. It gets a little tricky with all the head-to-heads because then it goes descending order based on, first and second, second and third, and who's got the best record against the next highest in the Mount Hood standings. So we'll need a little help from Barlow tomorrow night to hopefully get a home playoff game in the playoffs next week.
Now, your rankings will be frozen the same as baseball, I believe, Thursday night. Is that right?
That is correct. Thursday we'll have the final rankings.
Currently in the RPI, I think you're either 20 or 21, so you're probably looking at an opponent somewhere in 10 to 12 on the RPI rankings.
Yeah, which is
that makes sense.
Yeah, which is right now I think anywhere between Tigard, McNary, and I believe a Medford school, if I'm not mistaken.
Ooh, and that would be a road game for you.
Yeah. If we don't get the home playoff tiebreaker, we would travel to one of those three schools. Because
if you get the champion, you'll fall into one of those top 16 teams. You'll
exactly.
Get a home game.
Yeah, which will.
Oh, well, that's a big deal then.
Yeah, and we don't have necessarily a home field, but anytime we can get the last at bat in the playoffs is always advantageous.
Okay, tell us a little bit about your season. You're coming to a regular season end tomorrow night. Tell us a little bit about the Rams season this year.
Oh, yeah. The Rams season's been up and down. We've had a little bit of a roller coaster ride. Our non-league schedule to open the year was as gruesome as it gets. We've played probably 6 or 7 of the top 10 teams in the state right now at the 6A level. Jesuit, Sunset, Forest Grove, Glencoe, Tigard. So, I mean, we've had our fair share of bumps and bruises along the way, but, we're growing. We're getting better every day. We're hitting our strides now at the right time, being 10-2 or 10-3 in the conference. So, everything's about peaking at the right time and getting that hot streak when it's most important. And right now we're finding our stride, by a bunch of younger players, underclassmen, are leading the charge for us, which is making it encouraging for this season and looking forward to next year and future years.
Now, I know you returned this year, the last year's Mount Hood Conference Player of the Year, your shortstop, Olivia Pompetti. She's just a sophomore. You mentioned sophomores. I know Portland Razzo, your center fielder, is also a sophomore. You got some great players that'll be coming back for a couple more years.
Yeah, and this year also adding Jaspin Louderback-Smith. She's a sophomore. Last year we had a really phenomenal pitcher in Gracie, who's now at Western Washington. And so we had a big void to fill in the circle, and Jaspin, stepped up and has eaten a lot of innings for us, and learning how to shoulder that load of being a workhorse and an ace. And she's doing it in Jaspin style. She's going to attack everything head on. She's a fearless competitor, which, is something you really need as a pitcher, someone in the circle who's just going to go and attack and really force the opposing team to put a lot of things together before, putting us down for the count.
I've done a couple of your games, and Jasmine Louderback-Smith looked really good. Is she going to pitch tomorrow night?
Yes, that's the plan, is to get us out to at least to start and see what happens. If it stays close, we'll ride her hopefully the entire game. And if we can get a couple bounces our way and start opening it up, we'll turn the freshman, Grace Schellingkout, who's also got a few innings for us during this league season, and kind of help get her feet wet, as she's going to be, another vital piece for us moving forward for years.
Got any injuries tomorrow night? Anybody not going to play?
Most likely Emery Pike will not play. She's got a little bit of a nagging knee injury. So just trying to get the extent of it before anything goes any worse. So she's typically my left fielder. So next girl up, we have a couple options that we're going to be, talking with today at practice to kind of get our game plan together for tomorrow. And, we're going to make sure that whoever we choose is going to be ready to rock and roll and able to contribute at a high level tomorrow.
One of the players I liked on your team is the senior, your catcher, Delise Lomax. And I think you told me she's got a commitment already for a college to play.
Yeah. She's headed to Eastern Oregon next fall. They're a very competitive team. They're usually in the top 15 in the country for the NAIA rankings. So, to have a commitment go to a power.
Hello, Ryan, are you there?
I'm here. I think we lost TJ.
Oh no, am I still here?
There he is. Okay, yeah, TJ, back up just a minute. We lost you there for a second.
No worries. Delise Lomax is going to Eastern Oregon University in the fall, and they're a powerhouse in the NAIA rankings, typically in the top 10. So for her to go down there is a huge accomplishment for her and all her hard work, but also to show our girls that, the hard work does pay off over time, and, we can push to strive for those big schools that are national championship contenders at any level.
Right, Ryan, you got some questions for Coach Pruneda?
Uh, I have one thing to talk about with Coach Pruneda. How are you doing today, TJ?
I'm doing fantastic, Ryan. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for coming on the show. Hey, I'm looking at your roster. I think you have at least 3 girls that are daughters of classmates of mine when I went to Central Catholic. Sydney Ginter, I believe, is one of them.
Okay.
Dave and I got to see her play volleyball. She's a crossover athlete. And then the Schellenkout sisters, I believe, is their mom Missy Powers?
That is her.
Yeah. So I went to school with all those guys. That's kind of beside the point, though. We got to see you guys play in last year's playoffs. See your team against a Glencoe team, a lower seed that came through it. They had a powerhouse pitcher, and I think they rode her all the way to the state finals, where they ended up losing. You guys got another shot at Glencoe earlier this year, from what I remember. Am I remembering right? And can you tell me how that game went earlier this year?
Yeah, we got to face them fairly early in the season, and I returned pretty much that whole starting lineup. So it was definitely a get back type of game. We had a mentality that we're trying to tap into on a game to game basis. A lot of girls didn't like the sour taste of a playoff loss in that fashion, which rightfully so. It always hurts when you lose in the playoffs, especially on your home field. So this year we were able to avenge our playoff loss, and we beat them 2-1 in a highly competitive, very clean game from both teams. Wade over there at Glencoe does a phenomenal job with his players. And we were able to come out on the right side of things, which really kind of set the tone for us moving forward with this tough non-league schedule that I mentioned earlier. So it was nice to be able to squeak back that win and kind of even stuff out for ourselves.
They're ranked number 8, TJ, right now. That was a big win for you guys.
Yeah, and it's now that it's funny how the roles reverse. We were, in the top 10, top 5 last year, and we got upset by Glencoe. And maybe if the softball gods align, we might have a chance to do it to them this year.
Now, your playoff game, I believe they told me you follow the baseball. They'll be next Wednesday and Friday. Is that right?
Yeah, we'll have Monday, Wednesday, Friday next week. Obviously, win or go home, but Monday for sure. Wednesday and Friday is the slate for softball.
Well, I hope you get that home game on Monday. That'll be a big deal.
Yeah, it'd be a huge deal for our girls as well to be able to have a little relax and not take a long bus ride somewhere before trying to play.
Ryan, you have any more for TJ?
No, that's all I got.
Coach, thanks for joining us. Good luck tomorrow night against David Douglas. Let's hope you get at least a share of the Mount Hood Conference title and the number 1 seed. And then good luck heading into the playoffs next Monday. Perfect.
Thank you guys for inviting me on. It's always a pleasure to be able to talk about this program that we're building out here at Central. And, taking it one game at a time, and let's see if we can get ourselves a home playoff game next week, and we can get you guys out there.
We'll see you on the field, Coach.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Coach.
Ryan, maybe you can, if the boys and girls match their schedules Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and we're planning on covering both baseball and softball, how are we going to work around that? We're going to cover both of those each day?
Yeah, I think it depends on where those games are going to be played. If the boys, the baseball team's going to have home games for probably all 3 of those days.
Oh, that's right, because there are three third-ranked seeds in the state.
Yeah, so that
first in the go ahead.
Right. Yeah. The girls, the softball team will be on the road most likely. If it's local, they usually try to offset those games so that, if you're a Central Catholic student fan of any kind, you can go to both games, drive maybe a short distance from one location to another. But there's a chance the softball team might get sent either to Salem or possibly even to Medford for their game.
Yeah.
In that case, yeah, they might get even an even earlier game so they can get down there, play the game, and then get back in the same day. So I know the athletic directors usually try to stack things up so that they make sense for fans also. So we'll just have to see how things shake out on Thursday when they come out with the brackets.
All right. Great guests today. Ryan, any final thoughts?
No, this was a fun show. Covered a lot of stuff, and I look forward to speaking with you and our fans again in 2 weeks from today.
All right. Our next show will be June the 2nd. We'll have shows on June the 2nd and June the 9th. So stick around to catch those that are coming up. That'll be it for SportsBeat Weekly. I'm your co-host, Dave Hall, along with Ryan Johnson. Join us again in the future as we bring you our sports magazine format and we interview coaches and players. Thanks for joining us. Good afternoon, everybody.
And we're clear.